I'm Vithanage, and we are the Community Service Directors for the year.
Hope by the Rotaract Club of RIC is an initiative that we started this year, and today's session will be one of the first phases under this amazing movement. Today's session will be handled by Ms. Rashmi Sooriyabandara, and she will help us tackle the issues and responses that we received through our phone.
Ms. Rashmi is specialized in clinical and health psychology and has over 8 years of experience in the field of psychology. As a lecturer and a mental health professional, she has worked with children with special needs for over 5 years and been handling adult client cases at mental health rehabilitation centers as well.
To move on with our session, we would like to invite Ms. Rashmi Sooriyabandara to give a small description on mental health.
Hello, guys. First of all, I'm so sorry. My apologies for the delay taken. I just finished my day's work. I had non-stop clients today. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor. I have done quite a few before, I think with other Rotaract clubs as well, even one at RIC as well once. But they were all quite insightful and very fun to do as well. So for today's, I think you all have a set of questions that would be coming towards me, right? So I really like this sort of, I would say talks or seminars because it's quite, it's less rigid, less structured, but it's quite interactive with your, other than a host asking me questions that are pre-prepared, right? So basically mental health, what I would like to sort of brief about is, you'll already know what mental health is, right? Now this is what I'm gonna say: peace. What's peaceful for me is different from you, right? I don't use the word happiness, sadness, any of that, because those are emotions. But peace, we all have different definitions of peace. However, when we don't have mental health clarity, if we have things in our environment that we cannot control, if it's severely impacting our day-to-day life, then we don't have peace, right? So I'm sure most of the questions that coming towards me would be things that you're struggling at your own personal lives, or this could be things that you have struggled with before, or this could be something related to your future. So we are talking about the present moment, our past, and the future. There are some who say, like, forget about the past, focus on the present, or like, oh, just focus on the future, right? Work towards the future. I do believe that all three are equally important. If you constantly sort of try to run away from the past, it's extremely hard for you to go towards the future. So you need to heal the past wounds in order for you to move on to the future, right? So I hope there will be a mix of everything in today's session. I'm looking forward for it.
Thank you, Ms. Rashmi, for that wonderful description. Next, we would like to move on to answering the questions that were given to us by you all through the form.
So I hope I'm audible. Our first question is related to a much spoken topic these days, being part of the LGBTQ plus community. How do I handle it in a Sri Lankan family with the traditional thoughts of the society?
There's a error message coming on top. That a pop-up window. Could you take it off so I could see the question? The presenter window pop up.
All right, give me a second.
Okay, that's better. All right. So, being part of the LGBTQ community, how do I handle it in a Sri Lankan family with the traditional thoughts of the society? Um, this is definitely a controversial topic, right? I do have clients who belong in this community who would come, but not necessarily with this question, right? A second. A promo then I mean, is it possible for you to mute your mic? I can hear myself.
All right, sure.
So basically, this community is, like I said, it's a quite a controversial topic still in Sri Lanka, right? The very first thing that we need to question is what can we control and what can we not control. One thing. So let's say the person who asks this question belongs to one of these categories, right? Uh, yes, Pramod, I requested you to mute the mic, not the. I want to see the question. If you mute the mic, I won't be able to hear my own voice from your side. Yes. Okay. So, thank you. Now, the very first thing that we need to question is it possible to change your parents' mindset? So that's, I know that's the question that I'm getting, right? This person who asked the question might be, belonging to one of these categories. All right, either you are, um, you have homosexual feelings, right? You belong to the gay, lesbian, or bi, or any other category. And one of the first things that we have is, okay, the support from the family, right? So Sri Lankan family, the traditional thoughts of the society as well. Let's keep aside our society, because one thing we know, we cannot satisfy the entire society. So I'm sure the most important thing is the acceptance from the family, right? So it depends on the approach that you take. Number one, is it possible for you to communicate with your family? If you already know about their mindset and their beliefs, you might be already knowing there's no possible way for me to bring this up, right? If there is an opportunity, at least with one parent, is there a possibility if you could at least talk to an adult or another maybe adult relative or somebody who could at least persuade the family members, then that's possible. But let's assume that everybody is against this notion, and it's completely strictly prohibited. You need to get married to a person of the opposite sex or be in a relationship with a person of the opposite sex, but you don't want to, right? So number one, is it possible for you to persuade your parents? Yes or no? Number two, is it possible for you to choose whatever you want and completely ignore your parents' expectations? Because, guys, this is something that I always say, we cannot control the beliefs of others. We cannot control how other people treat us. right? We cannot control any of it. What we can control is our own thoughts, our own emotions, and our own behaviors. Can you switch off these emotions that you have? Let's say you have feelings towards you the same sex. Let's assume that you're a lesbian, right? You know your parents are completely against it. So just to satisfy your parents, is it possible for you to turn off your emotions? If you can, yeah, there's no issue then, right? But the issue came across here because you cannot switch off these emotions. So is it possible for you to disguise your feelings and, satisfy your parents forever? Or you want to actually live your life respecting your feelings? So that's the second question. The third is something that you need to remember is your happiness does not depend on the satisfaction of other people. That's something that you need to realize. If you're going to satisfy the other loved ones in your life, you will never be happy. The more you go through life, the more you realize this. You cannot never satisfy and make your loved ones happy. One way or another, you need to disappoint others. But if this is something that you truly need, this is something about your emotions, this is something about your purpose in life, the feelings that you have. It's not something of like, get buying a random bag or joining a random company. This is about your sexuality, right? It defines your entire life. So you need to question that. Is it possible for you to move on with life without satisfying your family or not? That depends on how I am to answer this question. How do I handle it in a Sri Lankan family? There's no magical way to handle families. It depends on their parenting styles and how they react to it. What matters is not how you're going to handle them, how you're going to handle yourself when you're going to disappoint them. That's the best I could say right now. It's such a broad question, so I don't have any direct answers to give. Pramodya, IME, are we to go on to the next question, or do you all want me to elaborate more?
No. Thank you, Ms. Rashmi. Next, we have a couple of questions related to depression coming up. Let's start with the specific one. If depression is untreated, would it lead to diseases and early death?
Okay, so first of all, let me sort of clarify. Now, guys, what we think of depression, I have seen that a lot of people misdiagnose, like self-diagnose oneself. First of all, remember, right? We all can have symptoms of depression. We all can have symptoms of anxiety. We all can have symptoms of OCD, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever it is, right? But that does not diagnose us with anything. All right. Now, compared to physical health issues like diabetes, cancer, gastritis, we either got cancer or not. There's no such thing as we got a teeny tiny bit of cancer. There's no such thing as I got a teeny tiny bit of diabetes, right? It's black and white. We got it or not. But when it comes to mental health diagnosis, we can have a bit of depression. We call it symptoms of depression, right? Me being a therapist, there are moments when my dog passed away. I couldn't eat properly for weeks. I was quite depressed, but I was not clinically depressed. I was grieving. So the grief that we go through when we lose a loved one, right? When we go through a breakup, when we fail an exam, when we are failing at something, we have symptoms of depression, and that's not clinical depression. When we are about to face something that's uncertain, there's a high probability of failing or us humiliating ourselves, we might get symptoms of anxiety, but I don't have general anxiety diagnosed within me. All right. So that's something that we need to know before I answer this question. Now, I'm assuming you're talking about clinical depression here, because symptoms of depression, it can come and go depending on the situation that you phase. But if it's significantly impacting your day-to-day life for more than 2 months, let's say, right? We usually say 2 weeks, but let's assume like 2 months, for a couple of months, you have been feeling the same symptoms, then we can diagnose you with clinical depression. Then I won't say it will lead you to early death, but you having symptoms of depression, you've been diagnosed with clinical depression, you need medication to combat it and psychotherapy. And something about depression is it can actually hinder your physical health. You can have a lot of psychosomatic issues, like, psychosomatic in the sense there's no physical illness in you, but these psychological symptoms are making you have physical symptoms. So joint pains, you can have severe gastritis, right? It goes hand in hand. Because of depression and stress, you get the gastritis. Because of this intensity of the gastritis, you get more depression, unfortunately, right? So other health issues such as like gastrointestinal issues are quite common, right? And your immunity will actually go down. You're more prone to diseases, right? And when you don't have the best mental health, you generally get more sick, right? Because of this, we can actually assume that it will lead to early death, but that has less to do. There are research done, but I wouldn't necessarily say it would reduce your mortality or something like that, but it can actually hinder your physical health, making you more prone to diseases which could be deadly. That's a more realistic way to put it.
Thank you, Ms. Rashmi. So the next question asks us, how can I cure depression that was passed on through genetics? My mom was diagnosed with severe depression and she had depression when she was pregnant with me. I have heard that when a pregnant mom is depressed, the child will naturally have a higher fight response or would be more sensitive. Is that true? I had anxiety issues since I was young and a lot of things trigger me easily.
It actually, unfortunately, it is. Most of these, not just depression, right? Many of these other mental health conditions, there's a strong link with genetics, right? But if you are going to label like, okay, I got depression because of genetics, we'll forever suffer with it. Always remember, it's not just genetics. Okay, it's not just genetics. There are other factors that contribute towards depression. Now, if you cannot control the genetics, you need to look into the other factors that triggers your depression. Now, you said your mother has postpartum depression, right? So your we call it prenatal depression, and there's postpartum depression. Prenatal depression is while the mother is pregnant, the mother gets depression, right? So your mother got depression because she also had the genetical vulnerability in her, and then you got it. All right. So it's not a causal factor. It's just you're more vulnerable towards anxiety and depression. But it can be. It's not, I'm not using the word cure for anything, but here I can say that you can actually maintain your symptoms and you can actually come to a point where you regulate your emotions so well if you know what your other triggering factors are. Apart from the genetics, right? Now you're assuming that you have the genetics, right? It could be that you don't have the genetics, right? Just because your mother got postpartum depression doesn't mean that you strictly got that dominant gene, right? So keep that aside. What are the other contributing factors that leads you to have anxiety? Focus on that. Things that you can actually control. What triggers your anxiety? Is it the society? Is it your own insecurities when it comes to your skills? Is it your insecurities when it comes to your appearance? Right? Or is it something about the anxiety is nothing but uncertainty about future, the next minute, the next second, next week, next month or year or even lifetime. So when we feel like we have no control over what could happen, we get anxiety. Our fight or flight reaction gets activated. So go to the most basic level of it. Forget about the genetics. Don't let the genetics already trap you in the term of anxiety and depression. You have already diagnosed yourself. You have already labeled yourself that you cannot get out of this. And you want to cure as if this is like a deadly disease. Think of it like this. Come into reality and look at your triggers. What triggers your anxiety? Right? Whatever you have learned, you can always unlearn. So once you manage your triggers and understand why is this trigger triggering me, right? For an example, if you getting late to class is giving you anxiety, and you look at another friend of, and this friend is never punctual, but it never gives her anxiety. What's the difference between her life and my life? Maybe you got more things at stake. Maybe you have more things to prove to the loved ones around you. That's why it's giving you anxiety. So for everything, something else is linked. You need to just go down the pathway of what your triggers are and what's triggering your trigger. Once you notice these triggers, you can actually maintain. So forget about the word cure. You have mixed depression and anxiety and everything here, right? Forget about these labels. Why am I getting anxious? Why is this triggering me? What are my biggest fears? What do I want to control? If you think you have anxiety, ask this question all the time. If I could control something, what's something that I wish I could control? Unfortunately, we cannot control everything in life.
This next question is also regarding depression. Can depression affect my ability to focus on my studies? If so, is there a way to help cure or make it better without the pills?
Definitely. I won't say, see, I don't know the exact diagnosis. You say that you have depression, right? So I'm not so sure whether you have clinical depression, where the intensity of it, I have no idea about it. So let's say you have symptoms of depression and it's actually impacting you, where basically it's like this dark cloud over you, you cannot get out of bed. Now, I don't know the duration of this, for how long you have been suffering with this. Let's say that you have been suffering with this for last couple of months, right? You know, this is not a normal thing where you're grieving towards something, you're bored, or it's something related to your day-to-day mood. For no reason, you cannot actually pinpoint a reason, or you have multiple reasons, but you have no energy within you to put into your studies. Even when you study, you cannot focus, you get distracted quite easily, right? Now, I always say this. Now, when it comes to clinical depression, there comes a point where medication is necessary, right? So I don't know whether you are at that point or not. So I'm not so sure how to answer the last line. Okay, I cannot assure you, no, no, you don't need pills, you will get better. I cannot say that, right? Unless I truly talk to you in person. However, something that I always swear by is, now I'm a psychologist, right? I don't know, I do not prescribe medication, but I do believe in medication. But I also believe that no matter what diagnosis that you have, you straight away just getting medication without psychotherapy is like putting a band-aid on a bleeding wound. The bleeding will stop, but the wound is still there. It's not going to get healed. It will take a long time, or it will just get just quite rotten inside that band-aid. You just need to completely replace that band-aid every few weeks. What's the point if you're still hurting, right? So through psychotherapy, you can actually dig into the reasons why you cannot focus, why what's hurting you the way it is. Now, there are, again, I go back to the contributing factors towards depression here. Please stop thinking of depression as something that you cannot control and you cannot get out of. There's always help out there. You can always sort of manage your triggers. You can always reduce the intensity of some triggers. There's always control. There's a slide proximity where you cannot control. But let's forget about that small proximity. Let's focus on the part where you can control, right? So these could be disappointments, regrets. This could be things in your life that really, really still hurt you. Depression is mostly tightly tied to your past and your future. So whatever that happened in your past, if you're still aching from it, you need to get closure from those wounds, right? Because that's anchoring you down towards the past. Then, focusing on your studies is something that's tied to your future. So that's definitely, there are barriers ahead in your future that you feel like there's no proper future. I don't see any happiness. I don't see any peace. I don't see any purpose in life. So this could be that, or this could be active, like current issues in your household or on your own head that's making you less focused towards studies. So depression or not, you need to look into things that's actually affecting your focus. Are these people? Are these past wounds? Or is it that it's neither past wounds or people? It's just you cannot sit in one place and focus. Sometimes you yourself don't know what your triggers are. So, to answer the question, please go towards a counselor or a psychologist and look into your triggers, look into your wounds. Once you sort of manage these triggers and wounds and get to know more about your diagnosis, forget about the diagnosis, get to know more about what's hurting you, what's stealing this attention away from you, why is it so hard for you to focus, then you will forget about the words called depression, anxiety, and all these diagnoses. Then you will decide whether you will actually need medication or not. But psychotherapy truly helps.
So, our next question is, lately I have been really lazy and uninterested. I feel like I don't have any interest in anything anymore. The things I used to love don't feel so enjoyable anymore. Mind you, I was obsessed with these activities a few months down the line. I don't know, life seems so nonchalant these days. Maybe I just have too much free time at hand.
All right. Now, when we usually read such things, the very first thing that we get into our head is depression, right? So this feeling uninterested in things that we used to enjoy before, we call this anhedonia, right? So anhedonia means it's not. People think like anhedonia is you not being able to find pleasure in things. No, it's not just that. You are not able to find pleasure in things that you used to get pleasure from before, right? Now, I'm not talking about, oh, I used to enjoy watching movies back then, but I don't enjoy it now. That's less significant, right? But it could be things like, hanging out with people, or actually things that you would actually give you peace and happiness. You don't feel any emotion out of it anymore. It's draining your energy more than giving you energy. Then there's an issue there. And you feel lazy. So you use the word lazy. Lazy means you have a lot of energy, but you don't want to put into it because you don't care about it. But here, if you're talking about loss of mood, where you actually feel like, your energy is drained out, sucked out of you, then it's a bit of a concern, because then there's less control over it, right? So, one thing that I would like to suggest is, look at the timeline. When did this happen? When did this start? This feeling of anhedonia, this feeling of lack of motivation, right? When did this happen? You will be able to think of some situation, some thing that happened to you that actually maybe led you to come to this point. It could be a series of things that happened nonstop, and then you just got so tired of it. It could be one episode of a thing. It could be multiple things together, or you might not even realize anything at all, right? You might not be able to figure it out at all. However, the timeline is so important. Then you will be able to look into the reasons as to why. There's always a reason, right? There's always a reason for everything. even when it comes to mental health symptoms, right? So you have too much now. You have said that I don't know, life seems so nonchalant these days. Maybe I just have too much free time at hand. I'm not so sure in which way you're intending this, but in some cases, I have people who say that they have so much of time in hand. They're bad. They know they have so much of things to do, but they don't have the energy to do things. And along with that drainage of energy, they have this guilt of being unproductive. So it's a vicious cycle. You're blaming yourself, you feel guilty. The more you feel guilty, you feel disappointed in yourself, and then more less motivated you are, more less uninterested you are. So it just goes on days and days and days and days, and it becomes a very toxic cycle, right? So you need to look into where you're losing interest. Maybe it's a selective part of life, but if you are enjoying your life in any other way, then it's something to do with that significant part you lost interest. Maybe something happened in that area in life, right? Or it's a situation, it's a location that you're in. Maybe you only cannot focus on things and you cannot enjoy when you're at home. So something related to home. Or it's about you being isolated in a room that's leading you to feel anhedonic or feeling less motivated. So again, I know this question seems quite specific, but it's quite general for me because I don't know the exact history of yours. But what I would suggest you to do is look into the timeline, right? And the situations where you feel this lack of interest, lack of motivation, this emptiness within you, the situation, the environments, right? If it's generally everywhere you go, at your uni, at home, public places, or whatever it is, then it's more towards depression. If not, it could be something that's actually lowering your mood, but not necessarily depression.
Um, we have a question coming up related to dissociation. I need to learn more about dissociation. What are the symptoms I should look out for? I feel like nothing that's happening in my life is real, as if I'm in a coma, or if everything that's happening is all just a dream. It's affecting the relationship I have with my loved ones. I'm afraid I'll wake up and everything will just be a dream.
This is a good question. Dissociation is such a scary thing. A lot of people have this for different reasons, but mostly if you are a person who has gone through a significant trauma in your childhood or teenage years, right? So due to the impact of the trauma, your brain is sort of like um, I will, let's say, just impacted, right? I don't want to go to the scientific basis of it, but your emotions are detached from the reality, right? Your thoughts are absurd, and everything is not linked together. Now, for an example, if I'm suddenly feeling hurt right now, I can look back and think, why am I hurt? Did I say something? Did I think of something? Right? Or did I feel something that makes me feel hurt? So if I'm sad, I need to look into what's triggering this sadness in me. But with a person with dissociation, there are different types of dissociation that I won't go in depth towards. However, there's dissociation related to memory where you forget things. But then there's dissociation that's sort of making you feel detached with the reality. I believe that's what this sender is talking about. It's where you are not so sure whether you're living a real life or not. Everything feels quite dissociated. Now, there could be episodic situations of this, or it could actually be the episodes are quite recurrent. It becomes one big episode, and it can be quite dangerous because if you're driving, if you're doing something quite risky, like risky behaviors, like maybe walking down the road, or you know, carrying a child, right, or handling weapons, or handling, like, very sharp objects, If you're walking at a place where it's quite dangerous, right, you have to be very, very careful. Dissociation, don't take it lightly. There's always a reason why you feel dissociated. It could be due to biological reasons like physiological, chemical imbalance reasons, but even chemical imbalance are led because of trauma. So mostly, especially when it comes to dissociation related to the reality, right? You get detached from the reality, you just get so zoned out, then it's more to do with the trauma. But however, if you're just talking about sort of like a dreamland sort of thing where you get sort of lost in a dreamland, it could also be symptoms of other disorders like ADHD. In ADHD, going just zoning out and just getting so zoned out into a complete different dream world is one of the symptoms, right? So it, there could be many reasons towards it. It could be something traumatic, or it could be something of like a diagnosis such as ADHD, or it could be due to some medication or a substance, right? Illegal substance, it could be a illegal substance, or it could be a prescription drug, right? So there could be many things that's making you feel dissociated. However, what I would like to say is be extremely careful, right? Do not take this lightly. Please go to a mental health professional, please go to a psychiatrist, right, and look into the reasons of this, because this can actually lead to a lot of dangers in your life. Because if you have no control over your own thought processes and your own awareness, then it can actually lead you, yourself, and other people towards danger. That is why it's affecting your relationship as well. No, it's only affecting your relationship in a social context, right? But it could actually impact another person's um, life as well, right? It can actually endanger another person's life or your own life if the dissociation increase further. This can actually get more and more much more severe if you're going through extreme amounts of stress and anxiety. All right, I really hope you would seek help.
Right. So we also have some questions related to day-to-day relationships coming up. I have meditated twice today, mainly in the early hours. Nothing has worked. I'm still overthinking about her. When it feels like things are getting better and I start moving to a schedule, these feelings still don't go away. I get delusional about things that have barely happened.
Okay. Two things. The first thing is I'm assuming you're after a breakup, right? I hope it's not a loss due to death or something. Then it would be a complete different case. However, you're going through a breakup. I'm assuming so, right? The next thing is delusional. It's quite a strong word. We don't usually use it in context like this. I really hope it's not actual delusion. So delusions, you know what hallucinations and delusions are, right? Let's me sort of brief it up. So hallucinations are, we have our five sense organs. So we see things that are not real, right? So if I'm to see Obama here, then I am seeing things that are not real, right? Then I'm hearing things that are not real. So voices, sounds, if I'm hearing those, then those are auditory hallucinations. Then if I'm smelling things that are not real, if I'm smelling smoke for no reason, I feel like I'm in a danger, but there's actually no smoke. I smell poison, toxins, or something, right? Then it's not real. These are olfactory hallucinations, right? Then, if I'm tasting things that are not real, if I have a feeling that somebody is poisoning me, I might actually taste poison. Some like changes in taste, something in my food, because I have that belief. Because of that, I'm tasting things that are not real. All right. And then touch. I'm feeling things that are not real. I can actually feel animals, insects crawling inside my body. I can feel like a chip is inside stuck in my body. So this can happen due to severe schizophrenia when it comes to hallucinations related to touch feel. So these are hallucinations. Delusions are thought processes thoughts and beliefs that are not real. So I'm not talking about, so for an example, if I have insecurities, I believe I'm ugly. Uh, Everybody is saying like, no, you're not ugly. But I was like, no, I'm ugly. Now that's not a delusion, guys. Don't call those delusions. Okay. Or let's say you think your son, like your friend just spoke quite harshly, right? He was talking to you with a very high tone, and he was basically like, angry at you. You're assuming that you're angry, and you're so certain that he was angry at you, but he's like, no, I wasn't angry at you, I was just hurt, I didn't scream at you. So you're saying one thing and he's saying other thing. You cannot call this a delusion. Due to our emotions, we might misinterpret things. The way we label things are different. So I really hope that you're not actually talking about delusions here. Delusions are quite serious. Okay. So when it comes to moving on from someone, right? Let's focus on a breakup. No wonder you cannot get out of that thought, right? And no matter how, whether it's twice or daily, like, or 5, 15 times, no matter how much you meditate, it doesn't matter, because if you want to think about it, you will constantly think about it. You cannot, meditation doesn't control your mind, right? Meditation is not a miraculous thing that makes you forget things. What you can do is, now I don't know what the reason for this breakup is and everything, but is there a possibility of you restarting the relationship, or is it still ongoing? Is it a toxic thing, or you want to stop it? All of these are very important to look at. Okay, let's assume that there's no possible way of getting her back, right? But would you forcefully get her back? That's another question that you need to ask. Are you so desperate to the point, like, even if she wants to break up, you want her back? So that's something that you are doing towards yourself that's very disgraceful and very disrespectful, right? When another person doesn't want you, you want that person. So you're disrespecting yourself to choose that person, right? And you think like you cannot ever find a person just like her. So regardless of the reason for your breakup, is closure is so important. Closure doesn't mean that you talk with her and sort things out. We need to have the ability to get closure even without communicating with the other person. That's why a lot of people, even if you lose a loved one due to death, how come people get closure? Is it possible for you to communicate with the person who died? Not really, right? But they still find closure. So it's possible for you to get closure from a person who is still alive but doesn't want to talk to you and sort things out and properly in that relationship in a very mature way, right? So getting closure is extremely important. This is a self talk. This is about you writing down, you talking to your best friend about, do you want this relationship back? Do you want to restart this? Are there any hopes out there? If there are no hopes, just confirm that there are no hopes. There's no possible way I would get her back. Then moving on from this relationship, the regrets that you have, the guilt that you have, and I wish I told that to her, I wish I didn't tell that to her, right? So one of the best ways to get closure is you writing a letter to her. Not to give her. If you want to give her, you can give it to her, but I would suggest you write it for yourself. You are addressing her. However, once you have just written down all the good memories and bad memories and how much of the raw emotions that you have, the things that you're dying to tell her, right? That you wish you could, but you cannot. Write everything, right? And you write about the future without her as well, the fears that you have and all the fears that no, I can actually put effort into this. There's always life without you, but the hardest part is getting forgetting you. The thing is, you cannot forget people. You cannot do it. With time, the intensity of the emotions will get lesser and lesser, and it will be easier for you, but it's impossible for you to forget a person. But getting closure can give you that release of emotions to nicely put, like, an end to that chapter. You deserve that. You need to do that, right? Only then you'll be able to slowly focus on the reality, focus on the present moment. Then only meditation will work. You cannot focus yourself to meditate and no, don't think about her, focus on no. It's impossible for you to do it. You're not a robot, right? So, first things first, get closure. If she's not ready to give you closure by having a mature conversation, get the closure yourself by writing it down and burning that closure letter away.
Next, we have a question related to abandonment issues. Please give me advice on how to control my abandonment issues. I grew being threatened to be abandoned. I've experienced loved ones getting distanced. I'm in a really good relationship at the moment and they reassure me often. But I cannot get over the feeling of being abandoned. I'm scared they'll get disappointed and leave. It's scaring me and giving me so much anxiety.
This is a good question. It's quite common than we think it is, unfortunately. Let me ask you all this. You all have heard of phobias, right? Now, for an example, if you have a phobia towards darkness, right? Are you going to avoid all dark places? Let's say you need to be in dark places because we're human, right? There are power cuts and it's impossible for you to find places where there's always light. So not usually, the best treatment towards phobias is exposure therapy. Exposure therapy means you facing that fear, right? So if you're afraid of the dark, you need to slowly build your confidence within a dark environment, because your anxiety is saying when you're in the dark, this can happen, but you don't even know what your fears are. So slowly, maybe starting with 2 minutes, right? Maybe with a dim light, and you slowly make it more dimmer, and then you come to a point where you stay in a pitch dark room just for 2 minutes while another person is right outside of the door. Bit like that for weeks and weeks and weeks, it comes to a point where you can actually stay in a pitch dark room all by yourself, right? So this is how we get over phobias when it comes to psychotherapy. Now, you know what I'm coming at, right? Abandonment is a fear that we have. And this is happening mostly because you think you cannot survive alone. And that's one of the worst things to go through. You think so. You think if you don't have anyone around you, that's it. You won't have happiness. You'll be so isolated. You'll be lonely. You'll be so depressed. You will feel like killing yourself. Now, the question here is not how much you trust the people around you. Now, you say that you're in a really good relationship and they reassure you. So, it's not about, I'm pretty sure, because you have anxiety and you have this fear of abandonment, you're constantly asking questions like, would you leave me? Like, it's like those questions like, what if I was born as a worm? Would you still love me? Those sort of questions, right? So, basically, I'm pretty sure because you have anxiety, you're constantly questioning him or her regarding, if I do this, will you leave me? Or the tiniest differences in their body language. You will notice those and you will see that as a threat and then question, did I do something wrong? Did I disappoint you? Are you going to leave me? So this can actually drain the other person and actually lead that person to leave you even before you even think. I mean, imagine you're trying to reassure a person, but you never can actually reassure that person because that person doesn't feel any reassurance. It's a very draining process. So this has nothing to do with the other person. This has something to do with you. You hate to be with yourself. So think of the worst case possible. Can you live through the worst case possible? Just like, in a pitch dark room, what's the worst thing that could happen? Similarly, imagine you having nobody around you. Are you actually isolated? Is it even possible to not have any friends in life? Right? How do you define loved ones? Is it by blood, or is it about how much they understand you and care for you? There's always people out there who are ready to understand and care for you. So there's no such thing as you will always be completely isolated. But what you have to do is, you have a lot of insecurities. You need to heal your insecurities. You have such low self esteem, so many insecurities that you cannot stay with yourself. What you fear is not abandonment. What you fear is living life with yourself. Because you're not a fan of yourself. How sad is that? So, first thing, you are already in a good relationship. Just accept that. The second thing you have to do is much more important than having a really good relationship is having a really good relationship with yourself. You need to fix your insecurities. You need to set goals. You need to provide yourself with love. You need to create a future, some envision a future which is not linked with others all the time. Do things that you enjoy, that gives you peace, that gives you happiness, that gives you self development. Focus on those. Don't wait until others compliment you. Compliment yourself. Compliment yourself where other people have never complimented. Make it a sort of a journey where you are trying to love yourself. I know loving ourselves is such a cliche thing, but it's such a beautiful thing that we can all do. It's about creating goals to improve our physical health, our mental health, spiritual health, financial, things that we love to eat, love to drink. It's about our future, everything. Improve the relationship with yourself, and this fear of abandon will just vanish because you will no longer be afraid of being with yourself. So when you get attracted to yourself, everyone else will get attracted to you. So you won't be spending and wasting time in life wondering, is this person gonna leave me? Is this person gonna get come close to me? You won't be necessarily obsessed with that, because what really matters to you is your own mental and physical health. When that happens, you will always notice the right people are always around you. And if they are to disrespect you, you won't ever tolerate it. You yourself feel open the doors like, please go out. That's the best gift you could ever give to yourself. Creating boundaries within your life, right? Respecting yourself where if a person cannot treat you the way you think you deserve, you can kindly ask them to leave your life. That's far more better than anything out there, no matter how many people are around you. Abandonment is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue, the worst thing you could ever deal with is hating yourself so much that you don't want to spend a minute with your thoughts in a room. You just constantly need other people's compliments and appraisals and love and affection, because that's how much you hate yourself. You always need reassurance from other people. The moment they cannot give that to you, you feel like your life is shattering away. I hope I answered your question. It might be a bit too direct and negative, but I had to say that.
Thank you, Ms. Rashmi. So the last question we picked from the forum is, I wouldn't say my father is bad, but sometimes he doesn't understand and is very unfair with the decisions that he take. As in, he doesn't seem to get it from my side as my mom does. Most time I tend to cry when he come and scold me for very stupid reasons, and I also get mad for me crying just because my father scolded me, and I even get the need to break things or hurt myself as revenge, which has decreased throughout the years. I feel like I'm getting better. I'm not reacting that badly as I used to when I was small. But if there is anyone else going through something like this, and even for myself, what can they do about it?
I'm sorry that you're going through that. Again, this one I really don't know the entire story here, right? So I cannot give very direct answers here. But when it comes to parents, that's, I mean, coming from brown families, we anyway deal with this family drama. What we something that truly helps. I hope think it can be sort of like related to this case as well. I have so many cases where not just children or adolescents, but even adults, to this day, they are married, they got their own children, but to this day, they still are impacted by their elderly parents, you know, um, opinions. For an example, I have one client, he's a very successful engineer, right? He has succeeded so much in life. However, whenever he's about now he's married, he got children, but whenever he's visiting his mother who is living separately, he always feels so disappointed in himself because that mother cannot ever appreciate him. Now this is a successful engineer, he has achieved so many things in life, but she's never satisfied. She would always try to find something. Now, this is a 48-year-old man, adult man. He has no reason to be disappointed just because his mother says so, because he has achieved so many things. He got his own appreciative wife and daughters. However, it's not enough. See, in many of these cases, it really helps to look at your own parents, look at our own parents as not just adults. They have little wounded cells in them. Your mother has a little wounded girl in her who is still not healed. Your father has a little wounded boy in him who is still not healed. If they are showcasing very toxic behaviors, there's a high chance that little boy or girl is not healed. So I'm not trying to, justify this or asking you to justify your father's behavior. But what you really need to understand is you cannot control his behavior. Like I always say, you cannot control other people's behaviors. You cannot change your father. That's something you need to accept. But what you can do is to reduce the pain, to reduce the ache that you're feeling because your father is reacting like this. You can do one thing: try to look into his lifestyle, look into his childhood, look into your grandparents who brought your father up. That is the reason why he's never satisfied, why he's so unfair, why he's so rigid, why he doesn't understand you, right? I don't know how to say. You'll be able to see a pattern. Either one of your grandparents, your father's father or father's mother, could have had the same personality, or they were just, no matter what he did, they were never satisfied. Or your father regrets so many things in life that he wish you did all those. You need to achieve all those to succeed, right? Or he believes that being this tricky is the only way to show love, or he has actually no idea how to love. So how on earth are you to fix him? You cannot fix him. You cannot teach him to be a better father. What you can do is get the love you get from your mother and do not personalize whatever your father is telling you. Because unless you are actually, like, messing up so bad and your father has actual reasons to scold you, then that's another case, right? Then there's an issue with you because you're rebellious or you're messing up with life. But let's say you're actually managing things good, right? But only your mother sees the goodness in you and praises you, but your father is never satisfied, he's only looking into negativity and scolds you. Then it's something to do with your dad, right? Focus on your mother, absorb all the love that your mother gives, focus on that. But if you have any hatred, resentment towards your father, think of him as a little boy who is wounded. You cannot heal him. Maybe one day he will get healed, but you're a child yourself, right? You cannot heal him. What you can do is make sure that whatever he gives you, you don't continue this further into the future as a cycle of violence and you do the same to your own kids or to another person. Unlearn this now itself. Do not personalize it. If you're calling you stupid, you are grown up enough to question, am I stupid? Or is it just his perspective? Focus on what your mother says and what your heart says about yourself. All the criticism that's coming through your dad, try to create a shield where whatever that comes here will walk out of here. I know it's easy said than done, but once you train yourself with less anger and less resentment, it will come to a point no matter what your father says, you won't internalize it, but you will only internalize things that's coming from people who actually love you, who actually understands you, and you will only listen to your own thoughts and beliefs. You feel like breaking things and hurting yourself because you know that your father is not right. So, why are you going to hurt yourself? Your father is already hurting you. Why are you continuing to hurt yourself? Right? So, if your mother loves you, if you can love yourself, you can actually move forward. There's only a small, brief amount of time that you'll be spending with your parents, right? I'm not saying like, okay, suck it up. This is what everybody goes through. That's not what I'm saying. I'm sorry that you're going through this. But what I'm trying to say is you cannot fix your father. What you can fix is creating the boundaries so whatever the bullets that's coming across his way won't enter you. Right? But only, you will only observe the love, the care, the opinions that people who actually understands you put towards you. That's you, yourself, and your mother. I hope you all will find peace.
Right, so those were the responses that we received so far. Since we are reaching the ending time of today's session, we would like to open the comment section for any questions that you may want to ask from Ms. Rashmi. Feel free to switch on your microphone if you wish to do so. In the meantime, we also got another question that they want us to convey to you anonymously. I will also send it down the comment section. I push people away. I like thinking they would push me back. But when they do push me back, I actually lose interest in them. Why am I like this?
I push people away. I like thinking they would push back. Okay. I push people away. I like thinking they would push back. Okay. But when they do push back, I actually lose interest in them. You would be either having an avoidant attachment style or you have an avoidant anxiety, like an anxious attachment style. Basically, avoidant in the sense, you know, you love connections, you love relationship, you love having this friendship. So let's assume that you're in a relationship, right? But you're so afraid of abandonment, you're afraid of being hurt, but things are going good in your relationship. But the small things are triggering you, and before that other person could hurt you, you push that person away. We call this avoidant. Before the actual thing happened, you have already done the damage. So it's like you thinking, me pushing this person away now itself is far more better than him initiating it and him pushing me away, which is much more painful for me. But the reality is, it makes sense when I say it like this. But the reality is, when the anxiety comes in there are imaginary thoughts in our head that are not true at all. Right? For an example, I have one client. She has a very bad avoidant attachment style, right? Whenever the boyfriend is sort of busy with work, right? She assumes that he is upset with her. So what she does is she gives silent treatment. She's not eating properly, she's not chatting properly, she just doesn't take the calls properly. Like, she is creating a distance, right? Pushing away. And she expects him to come running to her to fill that gap. But when that does not happen, it's a disappointment. She's like, see, I knew something's wrong. He didn't even notice that I'm getting distant. See, it's a never ending toxic cycle, right? The reason why you're pushing away is because you're so afraid of being hurt without your awareness, getting backstabbed, let's say, something like that. We all hate it, But we don't intentionally push people away because we are afraid of being hurt, right? Some of us, if a person will disappoint us, we would never know. We would never know when a person will disappoint us, but we will just enjoy the time until they would do that. Maybe they will never disappoint us. But even before that happens, if you're going to push that person away, you're going to ruin something that could be amazing. And this could be very tiring to other people. There's a reason why you're avoidant. Again, it dates back to your childhood. Look into your parents. Look into the parenting style you grew up with. There is always a connection to that. The reason why you push people away, right? This could be because you came from a conflict driven family where there's a lot of conflict. So it's easier for you to refrain from having big issues. So pushing them ahead of time before the issues happen is far more better for you than dealing with the issues later on, right? So you are already doing the damage, so you don't need to deal with the aftermath of it, right? So it could be that. So there could be many reasons why this is happening, but it's really important to know what your wounds are. Once you sort of identify your wounds, you will understand why you're avoidant, why you have an avoidant attachment style.
Thank you, Ms. Rashmi. So we have been receiving more messages that they wanted us to comment. Mostly, we added another issue in the comment section.
Okay. My horoscope says I won't stay in a long stay long in a relationship if there's like even slight pain, and I think it's true, but I don't want to end up alone. What can I do to change? So I assume you're talking about, okay, I see the horoscope part, but I'm assuming you're talking about, like, you're so sensitive, like it says that you're so sensitive, that you withdraw from people and you end relationships, so that would make you be alone, right? Now, here this is something related to mental health, but also not related to mental health. But I will answer this because it's quite common in Sri Lanka, right? Now, the first question is, it depends on, do you actually believe in the horoscope or not? Right? If you actually believe in the horoscope, no matter what I say or another psychiatrist say, whoever it is says, it doesn't matter because it's already embedded in your head that, oh, it's true, I'm like this. So even if you put the utmost effort into your communication skills or interpersonal skills, you already know that your life is gonna get messed up once you get into a relationship because horoscope says so. But let's say your parents has forced you to check the horoscope, but you don't 100% believe in it, but that, that we call kahata, sort of like a trace of it is in your head. It's, you don't 100% believe in it, but now that the horoscope has told you so, it's bothering you because you have seen some similar things where you're quite sensitive. Now, you're grown up enough to look into what you're most sensitive about. All right. So, slight pain, I don't know what you're talking about. I really hope it's not physical pain where it's abuse. But let's talk about mental, being hurt by somebody, mentally being, like, an emotionally being hurt, right? So, again, we come back to the pattern of, when are you usually hurt? When are you most sensitive? If you're irrationally sensitive, irrational means you get sensitive, you get hurt for no proper logical reason, then that's your issue. But if you're getting hurt because another person is intentionally hurting you, that's not your issue. Your issue is being with that person or not communicating this, that you're hurting me. So that depends there as well. Always remember this. Whenever a person asks me, do we have soulmates? Like, do we believe in destiny? Like everything, I always say, we all have choices. We have so many soulmates out there. There are so many people out there. It all depends on how we handle that person and how we handle ourselves. How much we are able to sacrifice for that person. See, we have red flags and green flags, right? So if I'm sure most of you are in relationships, so you're looking forward to get into a relationship. What's a red flag for me is could be a green flag for you. So you need to get into a relationship that's compatible with your red flags and your green flags. But it should not be quite toxic either, right? So as long as your red flags and green flags are compatible, you could live with any demon out there. It depends on what you label as peace. But if there's happiness, there's peace, and if you both can resolve conflicts properly through communication, you can go through anything. I have so many clients who come here for couple therapy. Some come right before they get married just to make sure that they are taking the right decision. Some come right couple of months after marriage. Some years. Some mothers, they have been married for decades, like 30, 40 years. They have children, their children have their own children, they are grandparents now, but they are in that empty nest time where they are stuck with each other, and all those unresolved conflicts come up. So that doesn't mean they had a healthy relationship. All they did was just distract their issues with their children. They use children to distract their conflicts with. But now the children has moved out of the house. Now this old couple is in conflict with each other. So can we call it healthy marriage? Just because they have been together for 40 years? Not really, right? So it's your definition of what is a healthy relationship. As long as you have an understanding person, and as long as you can understand and acknowledge your own red flags, that's all that matters. You need to put effort in fixing your own red flags that could hurt the other person, right? And it's also about, like I said, the compatibility. As long as you navigate all of that, have really good communication, as long as the other person is not a serial killer, like, a very toxic person, what you need is just a partner in crime, right? And that feeling is the most rarest part, right? So you can deal with anything in life. I wish you all the best.
Feedback. We are already receiving so many positive comments from people. Uh, I'm sure everybody feels satisfied and relieved with what they heard today, because that indeed is the aim of Hope by the Rotaract Club of Royal Institute of Colombo. We hope we can do more sessions with you in the future, and we also have our Hope Rotaract Hope Instagram page, so you guys please give us a follow. So yeah, we hope we can do more sessions with you in the future. Thank you once again, Ms. Rashmi Sooriyabandara. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Good
Good night.
Good night, evening, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I wish you all the best and peace in life. Take care. Good night.